party, my experience, the record that I've had as a vibrant young leader, and I said I want these attributes brought to the Patriotic Front as a way to rebrand the party, as a way to win its lost glory, as a way to repair the relationship between the Patriotic Front and the people of Zambia, which relationship had broken down as a result, of what happened on August 12th, 2021.
Mm. And talking about that, I mean, you're not the only one. You're up against about 7 others, who filed in, and most of them have had full cabinet ministerial positions, and others have had, up to deputy minister in government, and you've only been up to a permanent secretary. Do you feel that disadvantages you in terms of hierarchy and...
First of all, we need to acknowledge that the Patriotic Front has a reservoir of leaders capable of ruling this country. It's just not the only 8 that have come out, even those that haven't come out. So the Patriotic Front has a good pool of leaders, and amongst them, do I feel inadequate that all I served was up to the position of permanent secretary? Well, my experience the last 20 years is far, I think, more than maybe my other candidates. My international experience is an added advantage. I've spent the last 7 years at the pinnacle of diplomatic life, in some of the busiest stations across the world, in South Africa and in Ethiopia. I've been a policymaker, I've been a consultant. In my young life, I was a journalist, and a banker. But in my later life, I was consummate civil servant, then, administrator, controlling officer, and then I've been a diplomat. So I think I bring to the table full requisite experience, full requisite bouquet of attributes you need in a leader to rule this country. We always say the crisis with Africa is just leadership. It's a leadership crisis because Africa has everything. It has mineral wealth, it has capable people, it has an enthusiastic young population. Why Africa is poor is only because of its leadership. Africa has not resolved the leadership issue. And if you see leaders that attempt to bring to the fore selflessness, that attempt to bring to the fore national attributes, you see those few countries begin to make strides in developing their countries. What comes to mind is our forefathers, the Kaundas, the Kwame Nkrumahs, the Julius Nyereres, the Jomo Kenyatta, the Bembelas, these leaders were selfless in approach. They recognized that the challenges they faced could be overcome. And that's the type of leaders we seem to have lost the last 30 years. Because we have leaders that are selfish, that preoccupy themselves with self-aggrandizement, self-enriching, leaders that engage in acts of corruption, leaders that want to save their families, their tribes first before they save the nation. And I say there must be a stop to this. There's an opportunity for us to go back to a leadership that is selfless in nature, that just loves the country and you want to improve the country. Those are some of the attributes that I bring to this competition.
There's one attribute that has been associated with you many times, that you have been a highly persuasive political propagandist. Is that true?
I am an expert. I'm a communications expert. From my journalism background, I've been privileged to participate in elections and fashion political communication. I think the first one I fully participated was 2001 as a consultant. The 2006 elections for the Patriotic Front, where I was now not just a media expert, but also a political strategist to bring to the fore strategies then that could help the Patriotic Front succeed in the 2006 election. And that has been my story. So whether people want to turn the opportunity and skill that the Lord has gifted me, where I can come to speak to people and persuade them, or I can draw up programs that persuade people, and someone wants to call it propaganda. Probably they don't know what propaganda is. I'm simply a communication expert among many attributes.
And the reason people find it easy to call you propagandist is because also they are aware that you are a student of the late, so rest in peace, second Republican president in Dr. Chiluba, who called himself a political engineer.
It truly was a political engineer, and he was also gifted. He was a gifted speaker. I'm far from it. He could persuade.
Some engineering?
I sat under his feet for 10 years. For 10 years, nearly every day I was with that man. I don't see any other person that has been with Dr. Chiluba in the manner I was. Probably just his spouses, but I spent a lot of time with Dr. Chiluba for a period of 10 years. I say that he was my best university. But there are things that I got from Dr. Chiluba. Fear God. God leads your path. Don't think you are better than everybody else. The Lord has just lifted you from amongst others. It's not that you are better. The Lord can use any vessel. So you are not privileged in any way. Recognize that God has brought you thus far. He also recognized that very, very well. And secondly, selfless. Be selfless. It's about people. It's not about you. It's not about your family. It's not about your wife. It's not about your families and young brothers. It's about the people always. And for me, those are some of the attributes. If you respect people, you will not engage in acts of corruption. If you respect people, if you fear God, you will not engage in malpractices. If you fear God, you will not be tribalist in your approach to leadership. So those are some of the attributes I got. But propagandist, I just want to advise, information is free. Get it. You'll be surprised how much your brain can absorb the information. Get it, is free. Read newspapers, listen to radio, listen to the news. Engage when you meet people. Listen more than you talk more. I've met a lot of leaders who just speak and speak and speak. They have no opportunity to learn. When you meet people, sometimes just keep your mouth shut. Listen to others and learn. So for me, I prime information as the biggest asset beyond money. That's why it's not enough that you have money and you think you can win elections. Someone who has information can beat you. And we have demonstrated when I participated in the 2015 election, my candidate in the party at the time, Edgar Lungu, didn't have money. All his opponents actually were millionaires. We beat them, and then we had to face another candidate in Hakainde Hichilema, who's a well-known multi-millionaire. And we didn't have money, but we had to face him and beat him at the elections. It's about people, it's not about the money.
Let's get into what you would be bringing to the party. You know that should you actually ascend to the top position of Patriotic Front, you know that you would actually find this party tagged with a lot of, the history which talks about the party's violence in the first place. And of course, there is a lot of losing of members to other political parties, meaning that you have to actually also pursue this rebranding process heavily in order for this particular party to get a chance to, win the 2026 elections. How do you intend to turn around with regards to rebranding and also wooing back membership?
So there has to be a recognition that mistakes were made. That's number one. If you have a leadership that wants to justify, if you have a leadership that wants to hide the mistakes of the past, if you have a leadership that wants to provide excuses, you failed in leadership and in running the Patriotic Front. You have to acknowledge first the mistakes that were made. You have to acknowledge why we lost elections, because it is the only way in which then to provide change, in which way to win back the hearts of the people of Zambia. If you refuse to accept that there was no corruption under the Patriotic Front, if you refuse that there was no cadreism under the Patriotic Front, if you refuse that there was no arrogance and abuse of state institutions, then you will not win over the Zambian people. Because the Zambian people will say, what are you trying to do? They'll just say, Emmanuel, I think, Emmanuel, you're engaged in propaganda again. So you have to accept the mistakes. That way, then you can apologize for the mistakes that were made and then change. The Patriotic Front had a wonderful government program, the most ambitious infrastructure development, the best manifesto thus far. I have read the UPND manifesto. Well, a collection of fables. I've read other manifestos. Look at the manifesto that was done for the Patriotic Front. Probably one of the best in Southern Africa. But what about your mistakes? Yes, you built roads, bridges, hospitals, and clinics. How come the people then raise the issue of cadreism as the most important thing to them? How come people said corruption was rife? You know, whether it was at the passport office, whether it's at the police station, whether it was on obtaining contracts, you have to attend to the mistakes that were made, even as you celebrate the achievements of the past. What do I bring to the table? I have demonstrated that I'm pragmatic in all the offices I've occupied, whether it was the office of the second president, Dr. Chiluba's office. You know, I made a turnaround, I defended his legacy. I set up, we set up with Mr. Wakumelo an office where the president had an administrative structure, as provided for in the Constitution. I served as permanent secretary and brought far much changes in Northern Province, in Eastern Province, in Western Province, at Ministry of Information. My footprints, you still find them up to now. The changes I made, the dramatic changes I made. A pragmatic leader, The experience I've had, I don't see anyone, including President Hakainde, with the kind of experience I have. President Hakainde Hichilema, if you check his record, he finishes university, is at, as an economist, is at an accounting firm where he's providing, I think, economic guidance, and then he's thrust into boards, and then he becomes president. Very little or no government experience whatsoever. Hence the numerous rookie mistakes he's making in governance, in the rule of law, in issues of corruption. You see he's making numerous rookie mistakes. He's learning the job. It's just job on training. And so are his ministers. Most of them, there are few. So are most of the top civil servants, other than a few. You do not want a leader that spends 4 years learning how to do the job, because the lives of our people are lost that way. Unemployment rises. You have our farmers going without fertilizer. You making rookie mistakes that has an impact on the lives of our people. And by the time you are learning the system, you heard the president the other day saying that he thinks now it's a system. First, he's been blaming the Patriotic Front, but now says, no, I've found the reason. It's a system. It's not speaking my language and the language at the top. He's blaming the civil service for his failure. He thinks that the public service doesn't understand the president and his new regulations or new rules or new vision. Mr. President, the civil servants are experienced. They worked under Dr. Kaunda. They worked under Dr. Chiluba. They worked under President Mwanawasa. They worked under President Rupia Banda. They worked under President Michael Sata. They worked under President Edgar Lungu. The civil servants are experienced. It is you who's not experienced. So do not assume the civil service is not understanding you. The civil service know from day one. Many people don't know that when you go to an election, the civil service at the top do an assessment of who they think is a likely winner. And they do 2 speeches. One for the incumbent, based on his manifesto and the program, and the other one based on the opposition leader that in their view thinks will win. They prepare two speeches. If a president wins, especially before 2016, you needed a president to be sworn in within 24 hours. He should be presented at the Supreme Court or Parliament ground with an inaugural speech. How was that done within 24 hours? The civil service know how to respond. So they know President Hakainde Hichilema, even when he was in opposition. So, for example, they know him very well because they prepared this speech in 2015 because he came close to winning. They prepared his speech in 2016 and in 2021. They know him, they know his aspirations, his vision, they watch his speeches wherever he's been, his rallies. They know him, they read his manifesto. It's not in vain. The Zambia Intelligence Security Services collect our speeches wherever we are speaking from. They begin to assess who we are. Who is Emmanuel Mwamba? Who's Brian Munduvile? Who's Chufya Chitalo? Who's Monde? They assess all of us. Who's Mao Sampa? Who's Chimbakambwili? They have an idea of how they think we think. Are we capitalist? Are we liberalist? Are we socialist? Are we communist? Are we pragmatic? They come up with an assessment. By the time you're going to an election, they know us. So what you are seeing in the current president is total inexperience. Transformational. I'm totally opposite to this president, President Hakainde Hichilema, who says he's meticulous and methodical. Well, meticulous and methodical may get you somewhere on the road, but not in governance. Because you need to make decisions. It's like you're in an operating theater and your patient is dying. You can't say, first, let's find out how his BP is. Is this behavior normal? Let me go and study in the library. The patient is dying on your operating table. You have to summon all the knowledge you've had, all the training, all the skills, all your past experience to save that patient. Zambia is a patient on an operating table. Look, the West cost of living in the last 30 years, the price of milling meal, the West in the last 30 years, sugar, milling meal, name it, cooking oil, fuel, it's at 27 kwacha. And we are coming to month and there'll be an increment further. Your patient called Zambia is on the operating table. She has been unwell for some time. She's at the verge of dying. Mr. President, you are the doctor to save the life of that patient. Mistakes cannot be tolerated.
But if she has been unwell for a long time, it's probably the systems that he's talking about. She's been unwell because systems have not been helping.
Yeah.
And here he is trying to say, look, I've noted these systems have not helped this country to attain what it should have attained in the 57 years of independence, for example. And so why would you judge him wrongly if he has discovered that we've been doing the same things over and over, and this is probably the reason why we...
Zach, that's the correct word.
Yeah.
Doing things over and over again is repeating the mistakes made by previous government. He's appointing party cadres to the civil service. He appointed his deputy national secretary from the party as a permanent secretary. Unheard of. He has brought partisan individual as permanent secretary. The permanent secretary for information was some party official on the Copper Belt. There are professionals that can do those jobs. And there are jobs for politicians. He can give, for example, in foreign service, he can appoint one as an ambassador. Some of those that failed as candidates or are in his management committee, he can send them to foreign service. But you cannot take party cadres to Ministry of Information, Tabo Kawana. You cannot take party cadres to the Electoral Commission of Zambia, Mwangala Zalomis and our dear brother McDonald Chipenzim. You know that position has always been held by a judge. The crafters of our constitution were very clear. They wanted someone who's not just impartial, but who can be seen to be an impartial. You would never find a judge in a partisan regalia. You would never, because he's a judge sitting at the bench, the most impartial bench you can be at. He has brought a party cadre. in Madam Frances Mwanga Zalome's qualified woman. I respect her as a lawyer. She's, in fact, she even knows the Electoral Commission of Zambia very well because she led one of the electoral technical committees. I know her, but she's partisan. And there is a way in which our laws crafted that the Supreme Court judge should be the chair, or at least someone qualified to be a judge, to be a lawyer, to be the ECZ chairperson. And here, the president is learning nothing from history. He's learning nothing from the mistakes of his predecessors. He's learning nothing. He's not listening to Zambians. Because Zambians want our democracy to develop and thrive. Zambians want democratic institutions to be independent and autonomous and professional. Zambians, don't want the abuse of the law to punish opposition. The president has learned nothing from that. So there's nothing methodical or meticulous about repeating the mistakes of your predecessors, the mistakes that have been rejected by Zambians.
So in those electoral commission appointments that you are talking about, of Commissioner McDonald Chipenzi and Chairperson Madam Zalomes, those two appointments, what do you read out of it? What is the intended achievement?
He wants to manipulate the 2026 elections. Simple. He wants compliant people, people that love his party, people that are his cadres, to run the Electoral Commission of Zambia. He will have destroyed our democracy. Because our last bastion of hope is always the Electoral Commission of Zambia, where Zambians think that if they go to elections, they will have free and fair elections. We have had the tragedy of appointing cadres to these institutions. And many stakeholders said, no, give them an opportunity to be professional. We raised alarm when Madam Nelly Muti was appointed. We said, look, she's a UPND party cadre. She's qualified. She's a lawyer of repute in this country. There were two issues we had raised. Because we think that her cases, her criminal cases, where there was a nole against her. You remember that criminal case of 35 million kwacha, money she had collected for pensioners and she didn't pay them. There were two cases, one in the High Court where she was sued, and the criminal case, and there was a nole. We said, but this matter should first have been discharged fully before she can take up this appointment. Second, we said she's partisan. She's a UPND member. We want an impartial speaker. And our concerns have come to life. Because clearly I can say on public radio that Madam Nelly Muti has not discharged her duties professionally as a speaker. She has not been impartial. She has been quick to help the ministers. She's been quick to shut our members of parliament to speak and to speak freely. She has been quick to expel members of parliament that were lawfully entitled to be in parliament. She has expelled them. We even had the serious case of the 9, where the judiciary had to reprimand her. That as a lawyer, she knows that there is an appellate process. And you cannot expel people from parliament who have appealed against their cases when they lost elections. So this has come to haunt us. This is a sacred institution. The legislature, is supposed to be independent of the executive. The judiciary is supposed to be independent of the executive. We do not want these institutions to be all compliant to the executive. We'll have lost our democracy. We'll have lost our peace, because tension will rise in this country. Those are areas where we run to. You know that if I run to the judiciary, they are an independent arbiter. Whether it's President Hakainde Hichilema who's harassing me, I will have justice in the judiciary. Our legislators feel that, look, they may arrest me out there by an overzealous IG, but when I'm in this house, I have immunity and I can speak, and the freedom of expression is curtailed.
Is being clad in a political regalia the only proof that you have that one belongs to a particular party?
I don't know why anyone would wear a party regalia where they don't belong to. That would be very strange. I don't know why anyone would wear a UPND hat or a PF hat.
And you're probably judging them based on their past.
Yes. So let me give you an example. 2 examples. We had Beatrice Yevuka. She stood under PF in Chingola in the primaries in 2016. And she was a member of the local government commission. They used the pictures from 2016. She's been non-partisan. She was a professional commissioner. They used her pictures from 2016 when she attempted to participate in elections under PF. They used those pictures to have her fired from the local government service commission. So why would you appoint Mwangala Zalomis who's wearing a UPND regalia if you fired Beatrice Yevuka Mwila from the local government service commission for wearing a PF Chitenge in 2016? You say she's partisan. Why would you bring Nelly Muti as a speaker who is clearly with a party regalia and symbols of the party? Why would you do that? Aren't you continuing with fraternizing the civil service, diluting its independence, double standards?
Let me bring back to your party. There's a strong perception that by retaining the same old faces in leadership position of the Patriotic Front Party will only make the rebranding process nearly impossible, because these faces have been associated with everything that people rejected last year in the general election. How do you, and you are in that bracket?
Am I? How? I never heard that. I'm hearing that for the first time.
You know,
I'm a fresh face to the leadership contest. Yeah. I've been away for the last 7 years. I served in South Africa for 4 years.
Remember that a few months prior to the August 2021 elections, you were seen around doing all the, communication work for the Patriotic Front, and people questioned why you decided to do that when at the time you were actually an ambassador.
Well, all ambassadors came to vote. I was among those that came to vote.
But you came to campaign.
No, you didn't see me anywhere. You didn't see me on radio. You didn't see me anywhere. You didn't see me anywhere campaigning. But the opposition, wherever they saw me, if they see me at Pamosi, they said he was caucusing. If I am meeting with any of my leaders, I'm an ambassador. I can meet ministers, former ministers. I can meet the president. If I'm seen, I was accused of all sorts of things. But suffice to say, I've been away for the last 7 years. And before that, I was a permanent secretary. We trust the wisdom of the party that they will balance both old and new. There's nothing wrong with our old members. Let us be very clear. Yes, if they are members with issues, yes, maybe they can, in South Africa, our dear brother Cyril Ramaphosa forced a rule which he called the step-aside rule, where if you are appearing in court, therefore you are not eligible to hold a party position or even contest elections. The position that has affected a lot, including the Secretary General of the party. If the fight against corruption here in Zambia was honest, professional, was not being used as a tool to fight or destroy the Patriotic Front, such a rule then could apply even to us, where we say, guys, we're rebranding. We think that if you have issues, step aside, allow those without issues to participate in this election. But we can't apply that rule here, because we know the fight against corruption is vindictive, is being used. In many cases, there is even no evidence, because the fight against corruption is being used as a tool to destroy PF leaders, because among them a potential leader can emerge. It's being used as a tool again to brand the PF as a banditry party. These are thieves, don't trust them with power again. It's being used for propaganda. But we still have to be very, I'm defending the so-called old members, the so-called members that have issues, because some of the issues are fabricated and created to sully their names and attempt to destroy them. But there is need for genuine rebranding. There is need to bring clean people. There is need to bring leaders of integrity. There is need to ensure that you have a leadership that inspires, that you have a leadership that is transformational, that's experienced, that have all these attributes that we've been talking about. Because the quagmire in which Zambia finds itself is so serious, Zach. It's so serious. You don't need jokers. You don't need corrupt people. You don't need a leadership that will come and play games or learn on the job. You require people that will take the bull by its own and make Zambia really, truly prosper.
This government, the UPND government, has, kind of had challenges with regards the agriculture sector, especially...
Disaster challenges.
Well, I'll
disaster.
I'll call them challenges because they say disaster was the agriculture sector under the PA.
Oh.
Okay, so I will call it challenges because they've said they are only facing challenges. And the challenges that they are facing is basically the fact that they've discovered a lot of disaster and mediocre way of doing things under the PF, especially with regards agricultural imports, especially in the FISIP, and they're basically saying they're trying to clean all that up and come up with a strategy that will fairly, that will benefit everybody who is supposed to benefit from farmers' inputs. I would like to find out what you would do different.
When I was coming to the studio, I received a call from one of the old friends. He saw the poster that you guys made and he called me. He says, you talk about it. President Hichilema is very corrupt because he's just replacing your corrupt people with his corrupt people. The set of away from your Indians to his Indians. Our people can see that there's no changes is taking place. Same old issues. So if this president had friends of his that were Indian, this new one has also his set of Indians. If this one had his type of entrepreneurs that they would give fuel and fertilizer, this one also has come with his new one. Nothing has changed. And the only thing that has changed is that Zambians have been shortchanged. And let me start with them. Let's discuss, just give me a minute to discuss the FISIP program. The Farmer Input Support Program, first we go back to Dr. Kaunda. Remember he had NAMBOD and he was providing fertilizer to our farmers, very aggressive program, and he would buy all the maize. The IMF said the process was inefficient. They said Zambia was losing a lot of money in these subsidies that were unending and had created a dependence. So under Dr. Chuluba's first 5 years, all subsidies to the agriculture, fuel and food sectors were all abolished and dropped, if you remember that. So for the first time, the farmers began to fend for themselves. And by 1993, government realized, remember when yellow maize started and we had that crisis?
Yes.
Government realized, no, what IMF is telling us is not true. We still have to participate in the sector. And they came up with a new act, Food Reserve Agents. That was the first intervention in the Ministry of Agriculture by government in the agriculture sector. That we needed at least a body, not like NAMBOD, that would buy and commit to buy all produce from all farmers. But this one was for strategic reserves. And by 2004, 1994, 1995, FRI is in place and it begins to buy strategic reserves. And the food sector begins to stabilize. Then the effects from the liberal policies, the privatization program, that threw people into unemployment, into hunger, into destitution. Government realized they needed a safety net of some kind. And you see that by 1997-98, government using Ministry of Community Development begins to provide fertilizer to our farmers. okay, as a poverty alleviation scheme that give them some input, so that this rural poverty that has emerged because of our liberal and fundamental policies to shift and remove government from participating in the agricultural sector should be ameliorated as a safety net for our people. The program begins to do very well. Poverty levels in rural areas begin to drop. That by 2002, now under Mwanawasa, started under President Chiluba, the first fertilizer support program, FSP, is crafted under community development, where you look at farmers that are vibrant, extremely vulnerable, but vibrant, that you somehow can win them over and you give them a period of 2 years, support them with fertilizer scheme. 2003, 2004, the program is working so well. Our maize yield jumps from the last 10 years. We begin to go into 1 million, tonnages of harvest. And you see by 2007, the program has expanded from 100,000 farmers to 500,000 farmers. And good news, the PF brought it from 500,000 farmers to 1.1 million. It was no longer a poverty alleviation program under community development. It was a fully fledged food security program under Ministry of Agriculture. So you see that even the budget has expanded from $50 million supporting 100,000 farmers, supporting 500,000 farmers, to $300 million. And you begin to see bumper harvest. We've had bumper harvest from 2013 to date. This government found yields in our sheds, in our warehouses. From 2019, we still have maize from 2019. 2020, and from last year's season, 2021. 3-year bumper harvest, and the food security this country enjoys. The 1-ton export that President Hakainde Hichilema's government is doing is from our bumper harvest and our support to the fertilizer input support program. To 1.1 million, these smallholder farmers. You are giving them 6 bags, 3 urea, beso, 3 top dressing, and they give you this yield. They support. The rural poverty has significantly dropped from the 90%, it's now at 75%, and national average of about 60%. Thanks to the farmer input support program, because you're not just providing fertilizer, you're also providing seeds. You want a farmer not to have any hassle. This is a very successful program. Tell me where the disaster is to such a program. The disaster is under them, where they have formed cooperatives with no history.
But also the disaster could have been, the fact that there was all these harvests and obviously reserves getting more numbers in terms of bags of maize and tons.
Yes, another thing, sorry, I forgot.
But then the issue was that you restricted export, and export was very beneficial because it's the only way a farmer would realize their effort, because then they would see that the price would actually be attractive in terms of the price of a 50 kg bag of maize.
So instead of Food Reserve Agency buying only 500,000 metric tons, which is required as a national strategic reserve, we began to make FRA buy even up to 1 million tons. Because we knew that this is beyond
export of the excess. Why not encourage export of the excess?
Yeah, you do when you are food secure, when your price of mealie meal is low. You cannot be exporting when your price of mealie meal is at 170, because then you are not being nationalistic. You're not being a patriot to your people. Yes, exports are very attractive to FRA because it can have quick money. It doesn't have to wait for an allocation from Ministry of Finance. It can discharge the stocks that it has and have money to pay outstanding farmers. Yes, it's very good, and it's a lazy way of looking at it. But here is
in the audit report of the whole FISIP is that only very few people benefited. Probably a chairman of a cooperative would get all sorts of numbers of bags, for example, and sell them all. And so there was no order, and they feel that you encouraged this as a party in government. You did not intervene in this because it was now becoming a very unfair kind of way of distributing.
Zach, if it were true, there'd be no bumper harvest. Our farmers, commercial farmers, stay away from maize. They know the trouble with maize. The price is regulated. It has a lot of subsidies, both seeds and fertilizer. Our commercial farmers stay away from maize. The people that feed Zambia and feed the region, it's those same farmers where they are alleging that the audit doesn't reflect what's happening on the ground. You would not have a bumper harvest if you don't finance the transportation of fertilizer to our people, if you don't finance the transportation of their produce back to sheds and warehouses. You would not have the bumper harvest we've had. Briefly, we talk about the disaster that this government is to the FISI program. First of all, like what we have seen at Ministry of Health, and I hope we'll have a chance.
Yeah, because I have that question
to speak.
It was actually next with regards do you feel...
Is that this government and President Hakainde Hichilema, you've heard him at various press conferences, is preoccupied with removing businessmen that he thinks are PF. Businessmen are never partisan. Businessmen and women work with the government of the day.
They may not be partisan, but they've got connections with it.
They work with the government of the day. Remember, the largest benefactor of business in this country is government. Your entire budget of up to $10 billion, half of it will go, remember, to works, it will go to major supplies, it will go to contracts. Government remains the largest provider of government business in this country. So you want our businessmen to stay away from a large chunk like $5 billion. Not at all. They will participate. But to accuse them of being PF is being unfair. You even refuse to pay them. You subject their money to audits after audits. Even when the audits give you that they worked, you still hire 6 fresh consultants, disbelieving what the Auditor General has given you. So it's this bitterness and hatred against our businesses that has caused us this crisis, both in the health sector and in the agriculture sector. They did the first tender, and some of the businesses they call PF won the tender, because those businesses have been supplying fertilizer maybe for the last 5 years. They still have stocks in some of their warehouses from last year's season. They've piped finance with banks because the banks know them. They've dedicated suppliers because this is a bulk commodity. You come and disrupt that entire value chain because you accuse them of being PF. And you think you can manufacture new suppliers. Suppliers that have been supplying 10,000 or 5,000 metric tons. Now you think they can supply 100,000. Which bank will give them that supply guarantee? Which supplier will say you can have the fertilizer and you pay later? The problem is self-created. Here are 6 suppliers, the first 6 suppliers that were picked, and mostly Zambians, won on merit and they demonstrated that they had won. With instructions from State House, and it was reported, that tender is cancelled. And at the last minute, they do what is called direct bidding, single sourcing, where they picked those 6 suppliers and gave them contracts, among them friends of the president. We have a crisis because that process is ending in September. Remember, under the Patriotic Front, whatever its weaknesses, by April, May, the PF had fertilizer, especially Beso, urea, in warehouses, in sheds, across districts and provinces, by May. But you are finishing the process to do procurement of such a large commodity, and Honorable Mutolo told us that they are spending $329 million to import 307 metric tons of fertilizer. You finish that process in September, towards the end of September to October. You require minimum 4 months to bring that commodity. 4 months. First, we are landlocked, and then you have a crisis. One of the major suppliers Ukraine is under war, so you have to get your fertilizer from Saudi Arabia or Iran. You have to find vessels, adequate vessels to carry that kind of supply. Dock it, whether it's at Beira, at Deben, or Dar es Salaam port. Then marshal these thousands of trucks to bring that fertilizer into Lusaka, and then another 1,000 trucks to marshal it into the district. You require 4 or 5 months. The fertilizer that we have will only be available way after the farming season, because some areas are becoming impassable because of the rain, you know that. And the fertilizer is just docking in Beira, in Walvis Bay, in Deben, in Dar es Salaam. It won't be here on time. There will be some fertilizers that will be available, because there were some that were locally available. And you have companies like United Capital Fertilizers that do blending, but they need the actual raw commodity before they even do the blending. So what we have is a disaster facing 1.1 million people who will likely face hunger next year because they will grow the crops without fertilizer. And that translates to our food security. We still might be food secure as our people. Remember what I said, that in the sheds and storage facilities, we have maize from 2019, 2020, and 2021 bumper harvest. So the country might not really suffer. But again, I can't guarantee that the maize is there, because under the manner in which President Hakainde Hichilema's government have been exporting to DRC and Tanzania, I may not guarantee that the stocks are available in those sheds. And I think, you know, the way FRI does when the sheds are full, they have to shed off. So they create space for the new harvest they anticipate in the next 3, 4, 5 months. So we don't even know how much maize is available. But the point is, we may be food secure up to next year, but our people will suffer. The 1.1 million people will suffer. And even if they share in MEDA, it does nothing. MEDA can't even do a lima. You need at least 3 bags. Even when they get under FISI program, you and I send money to the village to help our people, to complement. They'll tell you, no, we only received 4 bags, but a pandemia in pakula. Nambi amasaka yabidi or nambi 4. They grow beyond the 5 hectares. So here we are, Zach. The country and our people will face huge challenges next year. What we have is a disaster in making, and my frustration is that I don't see this government. They literally needed the disaster committee to handle this crisis that we have. And we are hearing, I'm yet to confirm, and maybe probably I shouldn't say it on TV, where some fertilizer is being airlifted, but I'm yet to confirm, so I'll put a proviso to that.
As a party, you have actually encouraged your members of parliament to go ahead and move a motion to impeach the president. What is that all about?
Yes, I saw the announcement by my boss, Honorable Raphael Nakachinda, but I don't even have to look at the issues. This president has been flagrant with the abuse of the Constitution. He makes unconstitutional appointments. He has no regard to the Constitution. He campaigns even when there is a court order. He's just flagrant to the Constitution. I don't have to find reasons why he can be impeached. I'll find a million reasons why he should be impeached. The issue will be, will we have the numbers? That is the only debate that should take place.
But you have also pushed as a party that your members of parliament should not actually ratify the appointments of McDonald Chipon.
No, they shouldn't. We'll help defile the institution of the ECZ.
And it should be the same numbers that you are worried when it comes to impeachment. So how will you also succeed with regards the ratification?
So we have to put it on record on behalf of Zambians, and for someone to be held accountable in future. It doesn't mean that if you hold power, that you have immunity forever. people should learn from the past, that some of the flagrant abuse of the law can visit them, in the next cycle of leadership. And for me, this is something I bemoan, that you should have a new leadership facing the past to correct injustices of the past. It should never be. Leaders must act within the law now than to face the law after they've left office, because it comes out like it's harassment, political harassment. So my call is that the there are 3 appointments with Dr. Ali Simwinga, but he's a reappointment because he's been on the commission, he's a former ambassador, he's a lawyer by profession, he's former town clerk, and so far there seems to be no issues with him, except that he was acting during the debacle of Kabushi and Kwachaba elections. He misconducted. His commission was under his charge when that entire debacle was occurring. Maybe it can be added to the 2 names as well in our quest to reject those 2 names. If the president loves McDonald Chipenzi, wants to reward McDonald Chipenzi, if the president loves Madam Mwangala Zalomis, there are other jobs he can give them, not at the ECZ.
This is the Tuesday edition of The Burning Issue here on the Heart Road of 5 FM radio. Remember, we're also live on our partner radio stations, and these are Wave FM radio on 98.7 in Mazabuka, covering the rest of Southern Province. We're also live on Spice FM radio on 91.1 in Kabwe, covering Central Province. And here on the Heart Road of 5 FM radio, we are on 89.9 FM. Also live on our Facebook page, that's 5FM Radio Zambia, and also live on Smart Eagle's Facebook page. Remember, you can listen to this particular program live on many other online platforms, namely O1Z, Simple Radio, Radio Garden, Radio Box, and TuneIn app, meaning you can listen to us from anywhere around the world. And we'll be grateful. So it's time we engage our stakeholders, in this case our listeners, to call in and interact with you, our guest, on 0955221515, and that's the number. You can also send us an SMS on the same number, as well as WhatsApp on the same number. So the number again is 0955221515. Good morning. Good morning, Dr. Proud.
Podium. Speaker. For the purpose of this. My dear brother, Proud from Garden, good morning. Thank you very much.
Please go ahead.
Oh, we thank God. We hope you take tips from us. Oh, we thank God.
Please go ahead, Dr. Proud.
Including a appointment of ECZ, whatever. These are my views. We had this is the testimony, Mr. Zaki. He was the provincial chairman for PM. He was appointed by Varungu to come as the permanent secretary, which means you are no longer a politician. I never see Chipenzi wearing any regalia as a supporter for UPND. When you go, other people, they do call branch for UPND. As opposition, you are calling it our department president to appoint the ECZ commission. Now ECZ has been appointed. Again, you bring another issue. So let us move this country forward. You, Mr. Mwamba, you got a passion over how our country is being aligned. But I feel sympathy with you because you are just ambassador. We are nowhere near in the policy maker. So the person who damage the economy are ministers, such as the Honorable Gambioko. He was in the front battle of condoning police. You go to police right now. There is no vehicle. Are you going to blame my president or my Jacob? Come together. We don't have a vehicle for police from 2011. All those are issues where your policy maker. Me, I can only suggestion is through this radio station is up to any politician. In the Ministry of Agriculture, you remember Mr. Mwamba, they were Mundial Kazan. He was nominated a member of Parliament. Members, the UPD, we can adopt that issue to put a nominated member of Parliament as the Agriculture Minister be that health. Because this institution, they need the care maintenance. Because if you are MP, at the same time you are Minister of Agriculture or Minister of Health, you can't monitor two, both of them, because that huge population in health. These are my view. UPD has achieved Mr. Mwamba. You are going to come out in that studio wearing a red t-shirt, no one will beat you. Let us continue. People like Nawaku who say, no, the permanent president can resign. Is he permanent president and he shoot anyone? We want Madam Nawaku to ready to contest the election, Mama. Not to abuse it in the newspaper. President Wapap newspaper, no.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
That is to accuse our government. President was being shot by bullet.
Thank you very much, Proud. We'll take some more.
Thank you, Proud. Thank you very much.
We'll take some more on 0955 1515, and let's see if we can have this one. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. How are you?
Not too bad, thank you. Welcome to the program.
Yes, you're talking to Mr. Chilonda.
Mr. Chilonda, thank you very much for calling, and please go ahead.
I think the first issue, what you have alluded, appointment of the ECZ commissioner. I think for me, to talk about citizens have been advocate and protect the constitution of the Republic of Zambia, and also curtail each and every political party which has blocked any constitution, including PF or either UPND, either individual. You come out and speak out. So his organization has the Zambia Initiative. He has been working balancedly. For me, has no problem over them coming out. Even in PF, appointed Chulu. Chulu also in 2016 quickly announced the election when the petitioners was in court. So for us, we saw that these commissioners, the electoral commissioners of Zambia, they are working in difficult circumstances because each party loses will start now condemning. But you let this institution work freely. Then lastly, also our government should give contract to the people, especially those who are supplying fertilizer quickly to our farmers, because our farmers still cry for the fertilizer. We are aware that fertilizer is on the way, coming from Saudi Arabia, but it will take 21 days. So for us, what we need to give contractors, so even the money come into secretion. At this time, people have got the items in the shop, but it is difficult for somebody to come into a shop to come and buy because the money still hit with secretion. So for us, give the contractors and release money so that money comes to secretion because businesses
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chilonda, for that. We'll still take some more calls on 0955221515. This is the Tuesday edition of the Burning Issue, and our guest is Ambassador Emmanuel Mwamba, who is the Patriotic Front presidential hopeful. And so feel free to call in and obviously participate. But let's quickly respond to Proud and Chilonda. Again, evidence is still being asked for, and I think Proud is basically saying McDonald Chipenzi has never been in a party legalia, and I think it's not just about being in a party legalia here. And let's just bring out what exactly it is that you feel McDonald Chipenzi is a political.
Let me restate that first we would have preferred that the Supreme Court judge is appointed. As has been the history, the previous predecessor, Justice Chulu, Esau Chulu, Irene Mambirima, Justice Florence Mumba, if you remember. The only judge we've had is Judge Bobby Walia. in the 90s who came and retired in 2002, and Irene Mambirima took over, then Florence Mumba came, then Judge Esau Chulu. This way, you insulate the institution from these allegations of partisan conduct. The other issue is that we've seen the new appointee, Honorable Mangala Zalumis, in part regalia. And that has dismayed us. It has confirmed what we are saying, that probably the president should take from the pool of judges for someone to be ECZ board chair, as has been the history. I'm not saying that Madam Mwangala Zalumis is not qualified, because the law says you pick a judge or someone qualified to be a judge. So she's qualified, but that part is an issue. And also just to bring integrity to the ECZ. McDonald Chipenzi participated in the elections in 2016. He went and stood in the primaries of the UPND in Siavonga, and he was not picked. So if anyone wants evidence, that is the evidence.
I remember that.
And if you look at his recent conduct, especially on the Kwacha and Kabushi by-election, how partisan he was, that matter was so emotive to our people. They wanted free and fair elections. They saw this government attempting to steal seats. You are not just stealing money, they were stealing seats, actual parliamentary seats were at the verge of being stolen. And you saw how partisan that McDonald Chipenzi rendered a voice to give legitimacy to the theft of those two seats.
But there's also a possibility that probably, yes, much as he had applied to stand in Siavonga for the position of Member of Parliament under the UPND, and he wasn't adopted, there's a possibility that he probably also resigned from the party. And
he should show us his resignation letter. He should show us when he resigned from the UPND. The clock of partisan has never left him, and it shows in his work. Pre-build up to the elections, after the elections, trying to stabilize this government. McDonald is entirely UPND, using civil society infrastructure to give him some semblance of neutrality, but he doesn't. He's not neutral. You can bring 20 statements that McDonald Chipenzi has issued, and 20 statements who support the UPND and New Dawn government. He's entirely partisan. For Ambassador Ali Simwinga, like I stated, we saw his caliber when Justice Esau Chulu was not there, and Emily Skazu, the vice chairperson, was not there, and Shindano, Criticals, who was the chief elections officer, was not there, and the most senior commissioner that was there was Alice Mwinga, acting as chair. And we saw his misconduct too, that he participated in the defrauding of the two seats, Kabushi and Kwacha, and his conduct was as abhorrent as the ECZ could be at its worst in the period. So with those three commissioners, we have reservations on their appointment. We plead that the president should find time to pick other candidates. If he's keen to provide jobs for these 2-3 people, he can give them the jobs elsewhere. Proud also talked about Mr. Mcheleka Patrick. Let me say this. We condemn the appointment of Patrick Mcheleka because he was deputy, Secretary General of the UPND. But I can vouch for him. His conduct has been exemplary. It hasn't been partisan. Since his appointment, clearly you don't see him issue partisan statements. He's tried hard to fit into the shoe of a permanent secretary who's a civil servant. We can't say the same with Nelly Muti. So again, it's case by case. Here is Nelly Muti, who's the worst example of partisan conduct. And I am not saying this alone. The Council of Bishops of the Catholics issued a pastoral letter, one of the strongest pastoral letters we've seen in the last 10 years. Some people may be fooled by the kind and soft words we used, but look at the meaning. That pastoral letter was very strong. It condemned the president for tribalism and practicing tribal appointment. It condemned the rise of corruption. It condemned, the abuse of court processes and the abuse of state institutions, as we saw under Kabushi and Kwacha by-elections. The pastoral letter was very, very strong. And these, the clerics, these archbishops, distinguished men of God in this country, when they pen their concerns, you better pay attention.
0955-221515, and that's the number that you can call us on, but use the same number to send your WhatsApp messages. We'll basically be grateful to read them. And also your SMSs, that's 0955-221515. I've got a text WhatsApp message here, says, "Mornings, I am Festus within Lusaka. I have problems with the opposition, the way they do politics, and I'm not seeing anyone who will actually be challenging HH in 2026. Are you qualified to stand? Because I saw that your name and two others are not qualified to stand." And I think Festus is basically trying to say that your party constitution also talks about how you should have been in good standing with the party.
True.
For at least over 5 years.
Yeah.
And there are a number of these presidential hopefuls who probably are found wanting by that particular constitutional clause. Would you like to talk about that?
Yeah, I saw my dear brother Mal Sampa respond to the allegation that myself and three other candidates, they named GBM or Chibakambwili. These were comments made by Mr. Chilufya Tayali, one of the friends of the opposition, one of the friends of the Patriotic Front. And my dear brother Mal Sampa felt it obligatory to respond and make himself his case available. I think that's what it should be. Personally, I didn't want to respond. I don't respond to many issues that I think that are trivial. I qualify. There's no way I'll take a step to participate in an election and pay 200,000 kwacha if I haven't read the constitution of the party, if I haven't understood the Republican Constitution, if I haven't understood that I'm qualified to participate. But suffice to say, when my elder brother GBM resigned from Kasama Central in 2014, 2015, I threw in my hat and I said I would participate. This was 8 years ago. So if 8 years ago I was a member of the Patriotic Front and I wanted to stand in that election in Kasama Central, how am I ineligible this time? When a year later...
Because you became... obviously the
a civil servant. Okay,
and
I'll answer.
Automatically became a civil servant.
Yeah, I'll answer to that. When Mal Sampa himself resigned from the PF in 2015, after our general conference in Kabwe, and he formed his political party, Matero became vacant. I came and participated, and I was an ambassador then. I resigned my position, and I participated and I attended my application to the Secretary General. The President, of course, declined my resignation like I have always stated and said, you have a job, go and do your job. So I've been a member of the Patriotic Front for a long time. Can a civil servant be a member of the Patriotic Front? Yes, you can be. Can a civil servant be a member of the UPND? Yes, you can be. But what does the law forbid you from? From participating in active politics. As a civil servant, you are not allowed to participate in active politics. You ought to resign. What is active politics? Holding an active party position. You are a district chair, district secretary, provincial secretary. That is active politics. Or you want to participate in an election as a member of parliament. In fact, even for the council, you were allowed, you could be, people were working in banks and they could be councillors, but I think the law has changed. So you can be a civil servant and belong to a party of your choice, elect a leader of your choice. I know we say civil servants must be non-partisan. Yes, they are non-partisan to the extent that no civil servant should engage in active politics. The word is active. Don't hold a party position. Don't campaign. don't do active politics. Don't do anything that would denote that you are engaged in active politics. So yes, I've been a member of the Patriotic Front.
So
and
there's
I
nothing
qualify.
wrong, after all, to actually make those permanent secretary appointments with party members who...
I gave the two examples of
party
Nelly
members
Muti
only.
and Patrick Mcheleka, and I've said we can give Patrick Mcheleka
And they are
a
no
benefit
longer
of that.
in active politics since the appointment, so they
You
justify.
what I mean is, you are not seeing Patrick Mcheleka engaged in partisan politics. He's not issuing partisan statements. Every time he comes to the media.
So it's fine for him to hold that permanent secretary position.
You have Nelly Muti, who's UPND, who has failed to transform from being a member of UPND to become a
But
Speaker of the National Assembly.
Can you clear Mcheleka that the fact that he is not actively involved in politics justifies why he should remain permanent secretary?
No, we should remember our concern
should not be
earlier.
blamed.
We should remember our concern earlier was that Patrick Mcheleka was appointed in the civil service where politicians should be absent. This is one candidate who has participated in election and held a very senior position in the party. He's clearly partisan. And the president had promised that he would never bring party activists into the civil service. Remember, we're supposed to clean it, make it utterly neutral.
Do we still blame ourselves as Zambians?
And the appointment of Joseph Akafumba, who was vice president of NDC,
That's right.
we raised those concerns
So,
that the civil service should be a preserve for totally neutral persons. They can support you.
This is not necessarily the problem with the president, but it's the problem with the constitution that gives him too much power. Is the issue of stripping off too much power from the president the solution to avoid these things?
There's been a debate. There's a debate that
it's the same script.
that the presidency makes a monster. It doesn't matter how much a good person you take there, because the trappings of power, the available leverage and levers of power that is available to the president probably requires that the president, powers should be stripped. But for me, I say this constitution has allocated enough powers to the legislature, to the judiciary, to be autonomous and independent, to oversight institutions such as, the Auditor General's office, to provide these checks and balances. There are internal mechanisms. What you are lacking are persons and people to head those institutions to ensure that they are professional. You are appointed by the president, but can you be loyal to the Constitution? That's why you take two oaths: loyalty to the office and to the president, and loyalty to the Constitution. It is for that reason that we expect you to be professional. We expect you to be distinguished.
Let me take some more calls. We lost that. Let me take a WhatsApp message. It says, good morning, Your Excellency, Mr. Mwamba. To allow Mr. Chipenzi to be at the ECZ is a big mistake to democracy of the country. We all know that Mr. Chipenzi is a pure UPND cadre, not two ways about it. For the sake of democracy, please let's not allow him to be at the ECZ. This is Brother Chisha in Lusaka. Thank you very much, Brother Chisha. I have a number of WhatsApp messages dropping through. Please continue doing that. We'll read them quickly soon on 0955221515. For now, let me take this call. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning to you. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Okay. Your name and where are you calling us from?
Mr. Banda calling from Accra.
Mr. Banda, please go ahead.
Yes, good morning, Ambassador Mwamba.
Mr. Banda, good morning.
Thank you, sir. We are grateful. You are articulating it very well. And I would like to take you back over a group of workers whom we never paid, voluntary separatists. And these people up to now, from time you left, when the new government has come in, has paid a certain group of workers, but these people are still moving up and down. Minister of Justice, Minister of Finance, and so on up to now. What's your comment on this group of workers whom you left behind unpaid? You know this group very well. Voluntary separatists. These are government workers who went out of employment about 22 years ago. I want to shed light on this group of workers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Banda, for that. And let me take some more on 0955221515. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning, sir.
How are you today?
Thank you. Good morning, Emmanuel Mwamba.
Yes, it's Mr. Mwamba. Your name and where are you calling us from?
Thank you. I'm calling you from Kawe Central Province.
This is Kasoma, you said?
Yes, sir, for my address.
Okay, please go ahead, madam. Thank you for calling.
Thank you, sir. I took time to listen to the conversation there.
Right.
And now my worry is on you see, this is a tender from Zambia. Each time we have general elections, when the president comes in, he is the appointing authority. So this is where I'm seeing a problem. That's where there is a lot of problems with the opposition. Any party which comes in as an opposition is not happy of the appointment which comes from the president. But I, for one, I think maybe these tenders should be changed so that some of these specific positions should not be appointed. Should not be appointed. This is where now justice is being raised. Then looking at the electoral commission of Zambia,
Right.
I, for one, have no problem with the change because I saw him, he was really advocating, he was on top of his voice, condemning whoever was at his. So I think him being there, let him do the right thing because he is the man who was on top of all the things. And I think despite the appointment from the president, but me, for one, I'm talking on Mr. Spence alone. I think it's the right strategy. Let him be there. Let us see what is going to give this nation Zambia without looking at whatever position, whatever. But let him do the right thing. Because I hate him talking against the people who are in this. Now that he has been brought in that office, let's wait and see. To see what is going to do. Let him deliver according to the expectation of us Zambians. That is my take this morning.
Thank you. Thank you very much, madam, all the way from Kawe. Let's take another one. Good morning. Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Frank.
Morning. How are you, sir?
I'm okay. Good morning, Ambassador Mwamba.
Good morning.
I'm Sanda. I'm calling you from Mutendere. About the problem in me. At the time when you were died in 2010,
Right.
you were president at the time. And at the same time, you were President Michael Sata, strong supporter. So I always wonder how you were balancing your loyalty to the two people. Personally, I didn't trust that you were really with Silva because there was so much on Silva's neck that time. And I wonder why you immediately Silva died, you joined the Sata's camp. Although you say you joined the CF2002. My issue is how were you balancing your loyalty to the people, considering that they were active rivals to each other? Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chanda, for that. I think I would ask you to...
Yeah, let me respond.
Yeah,
let's start with Mr. Banda
Right.
from Lusaka.
Right.
He wants us to discuss the issue of pensioners. I wrote an article when the president celebrated that his government had paid all the outstanding pensioners. And I warned, I in fact provided the information, and I broke it down. I said, Mr. President, the people that have been paid are those that are under civil service pension fund. Remember, this is a fund that we are phasing away and migrating everyone to NAPSA. But there have been this category of civil servants that are under this fund. And by 2013, there were 22,000. And the Patriotic Front, dismantled by 2021, were only remaining with 2,000. I think 4,000, 2,000 in that year, 2021, and 2,000 planned for in 2022. So I said, even when you are celebrating that you've paid these pensioners, it's only those under civil service pension fund. And there were 22,000, PF paid 20,000, you've only paid 2,000 of them. So temper your celebrations. The hard work and heavy lifting was done by your predecessor, Edgar Lungu, and President Michael Sata. I said, and I reminded the president, Mr. President, there is another category of workers that needs to be paid. Those under local government service fund. Those people under LSF, those that worked in councils, in municipalities. Also there has been very poor funding, and LGSF is not properly funded. I said you need to capitalize LGSF so that it can pay the outstanding pensioners that worked for the council that remain unpaid up to now. And then I said there is two other sets of categories of pensioners. Those that voluntarily chose to separate in the 90s and 2000s, because every time the IMF comes, they say your wage bill is too big. You are spending up to 55% of your domestic revenue on paying civil servants who are just about 200,000. So every time you start an IMF program, they encourage that you share the staff under voluntary separation program. And there have been two major of those programs. One in the 90s and another one when we're doing the debt restructuring program in the 2000s. Most of those civil servants still haven't been paid to date. They voluntarily separated with government and they have not been paid. Then there are those whose companies we privatize, whether it's Lima Bank, whether whatever company UBZ, there are those companies that were state-owned enterprises. Just because people have died doesn't mean that these pensioners have been paid. So I said we should be very slow to celebrate that we've paid all the pensioners. That is why people are surprised that how come our young minister, Mulambe Haimbe, the other day, ran away from his office, running away from pensioners. We thought all the pensioners were paid. I don't know if you've seen that video. So you have the Minister of Justice, and the pensioners are camped outside. And he can't speak to them. He runs into his car, and the car drives off. And the pensioners are complaining. So people are surprised. But we thought the president said all the pensioners are paid. No, Mr. President. There are all these categories of pensioners. And Mr. Banda, thank you very much. We need to bring to attention these people that are suffering, that please clear them. And this reminds me of another sad matter. We've just lost Mr. Expendito Chipasha. He was the lead advocate, pensioner in those 236 BP pensioners who've never been paid. And the manager to that is associated with the company owned by the president. You remember the matter was highly politicized in the last 5 years. But the matter is that these guys were on a constitutional Supreme Court ruling, and they're supposed to be paid. And many of them have died. And there is a lead anchor person who's been leading this fight. Also, we've lost his life. I hope that those pensioners will be paid. I love Madam Karoma Agnes Mboroma because first she gave her full names and gave the place where she's calling from. She's very confident of her facts, and even her proposals for me are welcome. She, of course, says every time a new government comes, they fire the other set they found and employ their own. So the cycle keeps on going. And I can confirm that there has been a huge page under the president. Just 2 weeks ago, about 5 brigadier generals were retired in national interest from the Zambia army. This is a matter the president said he would never retire anyone in national interest. He retired 38 senior police officers in national interest. This is a matter the president will say he will not retire anyone in national interest. Then you have his underlings. His underlings like the managing director at ZESCO, who went on a page to fire up to 30 senior engineers, accusing them of being Patriotic Front. Does the Patriotic Front train engineers? How can you fire engineers that have been working from the period of Dr. Kaunda? You fire them and claim they are UPND. ZICTA, same thing. And the president has not been spared. He's been even advocating the dismissal of those that enjoy constitutional tenure of office under our constitution, like the DPP. The president has been at the forefront of hounding out the DPP. The SEC Director General, who had been unwell, was hounded out of office, and then you had, Mr. Now, to Moneko Fide to